Welcome to Bad First Impression, the podcast about movies and where we meet them. Every week, right now, we're doing a series where me and the guest talk about a film that has maybe been unfairly maligned, has received a bad first impression, that the guest feels the movie deserves a second look to kind of try and reevaluate it. Today, I have returning to the pod filmmaker Alex Campo, who is here to defend. You've settled on.
I would like to defend. Yes,
defend. I'll let you name and introduce the movie.
I would like to defend Predator 2 as a film that is not a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. Certainly not as good as Predator 1, but is not a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Most movies are not as good as the first Predator movie, I'll say.
I would say there are things in the first Predator movie that are perfect, and there are things in the first movie that are dated. Let's say.
You think that movie is dated?
There are some things that are dated, but there are some things that are dated in a way that kind of enhances the production.
Yeah, I think so.
So there's early on in the film liberal use of the F slur and the word pussy all over the place. And it makes you want those characters to get their teeth kicked in later in the film. And I think that's something that really you look forward to when Shane Black gets killed.
I personally, when I watch Predator, I agree with you that it doesn't exactly endear you to Jesse the Body Ventura.
No, because the first thing he says, his very first line is the
a homophobic slur. Yeah. I'll say that I think the movie is made with a certain awareness of these things. I think John McTiernan, the director, knows that I think he's poking fun at these things a little bit. I don't think that he's glorifying.
It's set up like a slasher film, and in a slasher film, I wouldn't call Predator a slasher film, but it's definitely set up like a slasher film.
It's got its similar construction.
A little less problematic, because like there's a problem with like slasher films is like it's the sexually active woman must be punished for being sexually active, and that's like something that we need to move on from. But like Predator is like these are tough guys who are calling each other the F slur.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think like it is kind of a slasher film, but it's not set up in the way where like they're being punished for being sexually promiscuous. They are being, if what feels like outnumbered, they're being set up to appear as strong and as reckless as possible to ultimately be conquered by something that is much stronger and out of their grasp.
Yeah, I think I kind of take it a little bit as a refutation of the action hero trope who just is a totally autonomous. I mean, John McTiernan would later go on to make Last Action Hero, which like kind of further questions these conventions of action movies. But at the time, I think he's saying these guys' biggest flaw is their insistence on going in as a special, unique, like spec ops force who needs no help from anybody.
It is a whole squad of main characters in the first film.
Yes, and everybody feels that way about themselves. Even like you said, Shane Black, the like nerdy pushing his glasses up, making jokes about being bad at sex guy.
Any of these characters could have been the main character of the film. And in this cast, you have everyone who not only has those characters traits, but it's like you could tell that the actors were in the gym trying to outperform each other when they're on the screen. And there are some scenes where like there's the infamous handshake scene where you have Arnold and Carl Weathers, and it's just like that 3-second shot of their biceps while they're doing that handshake, and you could tell that it's like these guys trained for weeks to do that, and they just wanted that to be in the film.
No, there's a there's a behind the scenes story about it. How these guys are like, one, they're all like roided up. They're filming this in South America. It's like a very hot, sweaty shoot. These guys are, I think the movie is made with an awareness of the kind of machismo of these character types. I don't think the actors themselves are the ones bringing that awareness to it, because you hear the stories about them and they were in constant competition with each other to see who could get the buffest. There's a story about how they kept trying to beat each other to the gym they had on set.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a story about like Carl Weathers would show up to the gym at 2 a.m. thinking he finally beat everyone else, and Arnold is already there, like, you know, like with a good pump going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just this constant one-upsmanship over each other.
Yeah. So that reminds me, is like, what is the genre of this film? Because it is kind of a slash. Predator 1.
Predator 1?
Say. Because it's kind of a slasher. Movie. It's kind of a monster movie. It's an action movie. But is it an action movie?
I think it's, there's plenty of action in this movie.
I guess so.
I think that it borrows elements from the slasher genre, the horror movies.
I would argue against it being a monster movie because typically a monster is like a metaphor for something, and I don't think that Predators really. I think it's just like
if you want to, it's a metaphor for getting ourselves in too deep.
I guess,
it is kind of a movie about toxic masculinity, and that it's the Predator just represents anything that is too much for any one person to handle on their own, right? I think
maybe.
And it's just kind of, and toxic masculinity is not necessarily what
and it's a bunch of guys who want to go 1v1 against this
Every
thing.
guy, there's I can't remember the actor's name, but he plays the character Billy in the
I can't remember his name, but Billy's probably like my favorite example of one of these characters.
He has this hilarious, it's not even on-screen death scene. I guess spoiler for Predator. Go watch Predator if you haven't seen Predator. I can't believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that applies to anybody who'd be listening to this episode.
Billy's death is my favorite one in the movie.
But
I think it's everyone's favorite.
When he's part of a small group of survivors who is actually like has a solid chance of escaping the Predator at this point, and instead he turns back. He's shirtless and like glistening with sweat already. Takes his machete, draws a slash across his chest, runs in to go one-on-one with the Predator. And you don't even watch him die. You just hear this horrific scream and he dies off screen.
So
every guy in this movie enters the movie envisioning themselves as the guy going into that moment.
So that brings up my favorite thing about this horror. It's not a horror monster, but this is my favorite thing about this monster and why this is one of my favorite films is the consistent portrayal of this character as not as someone who is fighting for honor and fighting for sport. And Billy is the one who gives it the most honorable challenge. So he takes, in a really cool scene, he does the spine rip on Billy where he puts Billy down. He takes the spine and the skull as a trophy, cleans it off, puts it on his belt. That's a trophy, like to show off that, I'm doing this for sport. I'm doing this to challenge myself. So it's not just the macho guys. It is the force that they're up against, the unknown, like invisible predator that is one-upping them in this competition of who is the toughest, most macho guy out here. Oh, it's the Predator. It's just like a big, like, it's a big, like, I'm the, fight the biggest guy in the prison kind of movie.
And it's kind of, what I view the Predator as in that first movie is it doesn't matter how macho you are, how big you are, how capable or strong. There will always be someone out there who can beat you. That will just always exist. It's a constant. The Predator is just the apex of that in this specific example.
Yeah.
And the best thing you can do, the best anybody does in this movie is finally running away from the situation.
Yes.
The only people who have any degree of success from this is, Arnold, he has to literally see a countdown clock going down with a bomb about to blow him up. And when he finally runs away, that's the only time he achieves any degree of success against this thing. I could sit and talk about Predator all day, which is exactly why I'm going to stop.
We're going to do that. No, we're going to.
The first Predator?
No, we're not here for the first Predator.
We're
here to defend the second one.
After this, we will probably continue talking about Predator. Because I want to get into Predator 2 specifically. Well, I think there's kind of two prongs. One, how does this relate to the original Predator as like a kind of a response as a sequel? And two, what are the merits of this movie kind of as its own thing, totally independent of that? You suggested this to me as just like you to be clear, never said like, oh, this is some hidden masterpiece.
I don't think it is.
No. And I kind of, the thing I said to you on the way here is I'm like, this is the sort of movie that like at its absolute best, it doing everything that it should do, still kind of caps out at a 3-star on Letterboxd.
I would describe this film as comfortably mid.
Yes.
Which is not bad.
It's not failing to do any of the things that a movie like this should do.
I think its biggest failure is in the comparison to the original.
Do you think this is the type of movie that you would love instead of like if it were not titled Predator 2, if it were just like about a monster?
Probably, because some of my favorite lore things about the Predator come from this movie.
Yeah, that's
it's what this movie does well is it expands upon the character because I think it is a lot of the same writers as the first movie, but almost none of the same. Obviously, the on-camera team is completely different. And that's actually my first thing that I like about this movie is as much as I love Arnold, he's not in it. Arnold is not in the movie. And here's the thing. There's no scene where there's only one man who we can call for the job. And they call him in for like a 5-minute scene at the end of the movie. He's just not in it.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's has a weird relationship to this movie. And there's a scene very late in it. And we'll get into like a plot breakdown of this. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're right. He's not even like the other character who survives the events of the first Predator. You actually see a picture of her briefly on a screen. Mm-hmm. Arnold doesn't even get that.
Yeah.
They confirm verbally that 2 people survive the events of the original Predator movie. Arnold has to be one of them based off.
There are only 2 people.
There are only 2 people. So we know Predator 2 goes out of its way to explicitly lay the track. Arnold is alive. He's out in this world somewhere. This movie takes place 10 years after the events of the last one. So it's not like a crazy future thing where he would have died.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that is out of some hope that in a hypothetical Predator 3, they'd be able to get Arnold back.
So yeah, they could. And you would figure it would be the easiest thing to even justify in universe because the Predator is looking for a challenge. And what's the bigger challenge than the guy who took out a Predator?
Yeah.
So you figured like that's easy. But they avoid that and they recast it just so they can put it in a different environment. It wouldn't really make much sense for a commando who, fights the Predator in South America
to be
in the
an
first
LA
film,
cop.
to be an LA cop in the second one.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the comparison between our main characters because I think that's the first thing that
the main character of this movie is, and I have to pull up his name here again. It's Danny Glover playing Lieutenant Mike Harrigan,
which is not as cool a name as Dutch.
I mean, on that front, it is the first. Like I'm chipping a half star off the top of it. Right?
Just for the name, Mike Harrigan.
I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it, but Dutch is just such a great action hero name. Mm-hmm. And it's almost because when he comes in, like I said I was going to stop talking about Predator, but I can't stop talking about Predator.
We're not going to stop.
When you first see Schwarzenegger in the first movie, he's like in shadow except for his cigar and bicep. Like those are the only things you see. And everyone's like, Dutch, you son of a bitch, as soon as they see him.
Yeah.
He's almost a parody of how, like the type of cool guy who struts into the beginning.
And like
I
said
movies.
Before, there are 6 of those guys in the first movie.
Danny Glover is not like that at all.
This was post-Lethal Weapon when he's already too old for this shit.
That's the thing is that he is playing the guy who is like, he's too old for this shit is the best way to put it. Here, he's presented as, here's my kind of read on him when I see him.
Yeah.
He is a pretty competent cop who like is more level-headed than most police officers that we see centered at in a movie like this. And he knows how to use like deductive reasoning better than, again, most action hero cops. But everybody talks about him like he's Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon. Everybody is like, you crazy loose cannon. And he's like, guys, I was examining a clue.
And it's Danny Glover.
And it's Danny Glover. Like, yes, he grits his teeth at people, but it's usually because like his partner was just killed. He's understandably pretty shaken
up.
The
only loose cannon thing he does in this movie is in the intro scene where he's like goes into his trunk and he's like picking up each gun. He's like, not big enough, not big enough, not big enough.
Yeah, there's the only other like rebellious thing he does is he goes onto a crime scene that a higher like jurisdiction police force tells him not to go to. That's kind of the one like, wow, you're a real rebel sort of thing that he does in this movie.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm like, he's maybe the most sane person in any given room full of other people who are like, listen to me, Buster.
Yeah.
You can't act this way.
Yeah. I don't believe for a second that Gary Busey is supposed to be the more sane person in the room.
Gary Busey, like who is, and I'm wearing my Point Break shirt because of the Busey connection here.
Yes.
It's so funny seeing Busey come into a room and like barely able to contain the bubbling insanity that's right below the surface. You can tell he's just like waiting for it to come out.
Yeah.
But he's playing a character who like until maybe the last minute really doesn't get to uncork.
He's the straight character in this movie.
It's really weird. And he's just like, he's literally walking into rooms and telling Danny Glover, you need to be more normal. And like as you see him like about to have he's like the meme of the kid who's whose temple is about to burst because he's sitting there trying to concentrate.
So I think what this movie does really well right off the bat, let's talk about Danny Glover.
Yeah.
So Predator it spots Danny Glover right away because, we got to make the comparison to the first movie.
Yeah.
I believe fully that the Predator would see Arnold and say that this is someone who I could go 1v1 with. And I want to 1v1 IRL Arnold.
Yes.
Like that makes sense. Like you could see them fist fighting each other. So the point where the Predator ends up completely like kicking Arnold away and just like winning that 1v1 essentially with Arnold. It's like that makes it so much more of a threat. But what makes Arnold win that fight is the fact that he's resourceful and he sets traps and he is using strategy.
Yeah, and he doesn't just...
And it's not the only time he does it, because early in the movie, there's the scene where like he, simultaneously showing off his strength and his smarts, he picks up a car.
Yeah.
Remember that? Where he help set a trap.
Yeah, that's actually like...
So it shows that he's resourceful, and Danny Glover in his very intro scene, he's resourceful. He takes all of the riot gear, all the bulletproof vests and stuff, and he does that stunt with the car just to show like, oh, I've taken my resources and I've dealt with this combat in a smart way rather than just using my muscle.
Yeah.
Now here's the problem with that. Danny Glover being like targeted for being smart and resourceful is all and good, but that's not how the final fight goes.
No, it's not.
It's a muscle fight at the end.
Yes, it is.
And that's where it's squandered a little bit, I think.
Before we get into this, I guess we should just like do like a really basic layout of it. The first Predator movie takes place in Valverde, I believe is what it is. It's a fictional South American country. The Predator 2, which drops you right into the action, doesn't give you any... It's not the same Predator because the one from the first movie dies. You're just in LA and kind of out of nowhere, there's a Predator there. There no real explanation is given for why this Predator is in a different locale.
There kind of is. So according to the lore of this movie, the Predator is attracted to areas with high humidity.
Oh, and there's a heat wave going on.
Everyone's sweating the whole movie. That's brought into it, which makes you question why Alien vs. Predator takes place in Antarctica.
Yeah, it's very weird.
If that lore is purposely brought into this movie.
Yeah, I kind of like that movie. I think that movie
Alien
is
vs.
like
Predator?
The first one. The second one is like, I'm not kidding, maybe one of the worst.
You'll have to come on and defend that one then.
Yeah. It's Requiem is like maybe one of the worst like professionally produced films I've ever seen.
Wow.
Like it's like literally it is poorly lit. Like it's as in like it's I actually can't always see what's happening most of the time. Yeah. The first one I think is fun trash. I don't really think it's a good movie, but I have a good time with it.
But more in universe reasons.
Yes.
So the reason why Predator goes to the jungle in the first place is because they have there's the combat that's happening there, right? So it's a hot human environment, and there's combat happening between the commandos, those who shot down the helicopter. Is it drugs? I don't remember what it is in the first movie.
In the first movie, it's because there's like, a bit of a double cross there because they're Carl Weathers is kind of tricking them into going, thinking it's a rescue mission, but really it's a recon mission.
Yes.
But
whatever it is,
there's combat. The first
happening.
movie isn't. Yes, there is combat. I believe drugs are involved.
Yes.
I couldn't.
It doesn't matter.
Those details are not germane to enjoying.
The point that matters is that there's combat happening. So the Predator needs the hot human environment, and it also is looking for a fight. It's looking for a challenge. So in the first movie, it goes into the jungle where this combat's happening. In the second movie, there are gang wars in LA during a heat wave, which is why it's attracted there. We could talk about that later on, but let's talk about the good things about this movie first.
Yeah. One thing I will say that like it's a little jarring because movies just don't do this anymore. Predator 2 drops, here's a Predator 2 title card in the infrared Predator vision.
Yeah.
And then there's no like literally Danny Glover and his partner are responding to a 911 call. They're just on the street. There's no setup. There's no, I'm going in for a shift. You don't even see the Predator's spaceship land. And he's just in there. And it's almost in media res.
I brought this up in our John Carpenter episode, but it does have the same problem that it has in The Thing, where the opening shot of the first Predator movie and The Thing, it's the same first shot with the spaceship landing on Earth. And I think both movies would be better if we didn't have that shot.
I actually disagree. Because I watched the first Predator in preparation for this as well. And I kind of had that in mind because we were talking about its presence in The Thing. In Predator, it creates this kind of like great tension of like, I know so much more than the characters in Predator. Okay. And I actually think while that doesn't really work in The Thing because The Thing wants you to be there with its characters, Predator is kind of inviting you. Oh,
because it's got all the first person stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Predator is kind of inviting you to mock these guys' like have you ever seen The Other Guys?
I have seen The Other Guys, yeah.
It's kind of like it's opening with, because you have Sam Jackson and The Rock in that movie playing like macho, tough guy, I can handle this sort of cops who die due to their own bravado almost immediately. Like they're on screen for like 5 minutes total. And it's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen.
I don't think I've laughed at a movie so hard.
Other than Aim for the Bushes.
Other than that.
Aim for the Bushes is hilarious.
Yeah.
But I think of it as kind of a sort of thing, whereas like that time they're obviously so overblown and stupid that I am supposed to expect something as bad is going to happen to them. Yeah. In Predator, it's kind of the same thing where I'm like, all these guys are like flexing at each other and calling each other homophobic slurs. And I'm like, I know there's a predator there. Like I spend the whole time, I'm like, I know you guys are like, Arnold has the great line where he's like, so you dropped us into a meat grinder. And I'm like, yes, that's what the film is doing to its characters is it's taking these guys who think they can handle anything and presenting them with something that just simply cannot be handled.
You know what? Now that you're bringing that up and you have the first, there's all the first person Predator shots. Yeah, we are supposed to know that there is something out there. So, it definitely is a bigger offense in The Thing than it is in here.
I don't think it works in The Thing. I agree with you. I think it's better for it to be.
It definitely works. Yeah.
In The Thing, I almost like, if it weren't there, then with The Thing, up until like the last set piece, you could be wondering, is this alien or supernatural too? Like that's why I think it's more ruinous in The Thing.
Let's talk about
the film Predator 2.
No, let's talk about etymology real quick.
Okay, let's talk
about this is me being annoying right here, okay?
You've never done that on this podcast.
I'm going to be real annoying
Pedantry,
right now.
That's not, you don't traffic in that.
Okay, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, okay?
Oh, we're doing this.
We're doing this, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Predator, an organism that primarily obtains food by the killing and consuming of other organisms. I hate to be this guy, but the predator?
He doesn't eat them.
He's not a predator.
What is the species name for the predator? Do you know?
There is a name for it. I don't care. It's just they don't even call it the predator in the film. It's just like that's the name of the film.
In this movie, they do. In Predator 2, I believe
they call it the predator.
Gary Busey, when he's revealing to Danny Glover, this is what we're dealing with. We know we're dealing with an alien. He doesn't call it the predator.
Yeah,
he's like he like in a very pointed way, the way that like sometimes a movie will say its own title. He says like, we're dealing with a real predator here. Like it's a line like that.
Yeah, but it's not like that's what they call it. I know there is an in-universe name for it, and it probably was made in like Dark Horse Comics or something. I believe
it. It is literally, it has gone unaddressed until it's either that, or I think it honestly might be one of the Alien versus Predator movies.
Yeah, it's completely unnecessary. It's just
it's the same thing as like the Xenomorph.
You don't need to know what it's called.
That name almost exists because alien is so generic a word. Like we need the word alien to refer to other things.
You can't trademark it.
Speaking of the Alien franchise, my kind of take on this movie is that it's really like Predator filtered through an Alien movie is kind of how it's structured.
Predator 2 is? Or
Predator 2 is.
Interesting. How so?
Oh shit. I had this like kind of more thought out earlier while I was looking at 1 second here. Let me look at
I'll show off what I have for my notes real
quick.
So what I do is I always take notes when I'm watching these movies. So in a case like this, we didn't go to a screening for this. This is just something I suggested. So I watched through the first one again, one of my favorite movies of all time. I have this is 9 flashcards that I have, and this is for the first film.
All right.
The second film, I have 5. Now, these are, when I'm writing and I'm taking notes, these are things that like I like and I could talk about. And I take like a couple notes on each one of these, right? So it's just like, a little thing I could mention here and there, sometimes character names, things like that. What's really important about Predator 1, every single one of these 9 index cards here, this is the first 45 minutes of the film. Because I have seen this movie at least 6 times. Every single time we get to the 45-minute mark and Shane Black's character is the first one who's killed off, I am completely hooked on the screen like a toddler watching Coco Melon.
Yes,
like I cannot stop looking at the screen, getting like I'm just completely hooked. And I watched the last half hour of this, the last hour of this movie so intensely every single time I watch it. So this is what I like in the first 45 minutes of the film. And the rest of it is just me like completely
transfixed by the thing. Yeah. I know. I agree. I feel the same way about
it's tense every time, and it's interesting every single time. And any problems that I have with the movie are typically before the 45-minute mark. Which the only thing I really have is it's the music. I don't think the music works.
The Silvestri score kind of blows.
Yeah. Like that's it. That's really it.
Alan Silvestri, who like has done some of the greatest like pop franchise work ever.
Yeah.
His original Predator score is like ass. Like it's a problem. Like it's just this ultra generic.
It's just like a generic action movie, but once you get to that hour mark, it gets more tense and it actually works there. But otherwise it feels like Star Wars action music. I don't know.
It is. I mean, honestly, it has a lot of like similar like motifs to his Back to the Future score, which is much better and tonally makes a lot more sense in that movie. I'm sorry, I took a look at my notes here, and because I wanted to be able to actually extrapolate this. Why Predator 2 feels like Predator filtered through the structure of an Alien movie is because you have one main character who understands this thing just needs to be dead.
Yeah.
And an outside force who is convinced they can profit off of containing and using this. It's, I mean, like, Gary Busey, who is, I forget what agency he's part of. I think it's like a non-existent one.
It's not the FBI.
It's like
something like
he might claim he's FBI when he first comes in so that like he can be undercover. But I think he's part of this clandestine operation who's like, we're here to track the Predator. We're going to, just like Weyland Yutani does in every single Alien movie, we are going to capture it. We are going to weaponize it, and we're going to profit off of it. And I think that like this movie is like really similarly structured in that the carnage really kicks in the more that force tries to exert control over the situation. And the tighter they try to squeeze, the harder they try to gain control over the situation, the more people the Predator starts killing.
Yeah. Well, one more thing for that, you're look into this. Bill Paxton's also in it.
Yes, and I feel like there's a really good chance that we might be about to bring up the same thing. Bill Paxton is, I believe, the only actor to be killed by a xenomorph, a Predator, and a Terminator.
Correct.
I don't believe anybody else.
That's the one famous bar trivia that everyone knows.
Yes. Well, thanks for undermining that. I know. This is cool. I found dead in a ditch for my Bill Paxton knowledge. Bill Paxton, I want to talk about him a little bit in this.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He plays the rookie cop who asks for a transfer to this really dangerous precinct. And Danny Glover, here's the problem with Danny Glover. The movie can't ever really decide how it wants him to exist. Is he the loose cannon or is he the tired old guy?
Yeah.
Because he's got the partner who dies like early on in the movie that he's like, man, I worked with him for 15 years.
Yeah.
But he also has like the sit down with Bill Paxton where he's like, look, this is the speech I got. It's the only thing I got. And I only give it once. And he tells him, don't be such a hot shot. Don't be going out there. Does the movie want him to be the tired old vet, or does it want him to be, Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon?
Well, it's, they do the same thing too, where, he's set up to be resourceful and strategic, but the ending just ends up being a muscle fight.
Yeah.
But then again, his catchphrase in the movie is, shit happens.
Yeah, shit happens. He's also got a weird thing about birds. He's like the last thing I need is birds. Like he keeps saying that.
I watched this movie 2 days ago. I don't even remember the birds thing.
Like 3 separate times. Like one time he gets spooked by birds, and then he like makes a reference to it. Doesn't go anywhere. Just like multiple times throughout the movie. Like, but they're not like none of them like shit on his shoulder or anything like that.
Yeah.
They just fly off, and he's like, I get so nervous when I see him. I'm like, why are you?
One thing is him being shown to be the resourceful one. There's a thing I wrote down because I find it hilarious. In the first Predator, Arnold is the one that discovers that the Predator is only going after people for the sake of combat and people who are armed. Danny Glover is the one who discovers that the Predator is only going after ones who are armed, but that's after the subway scene where every single person on the subway is armed.
The
and
most
Danny Glover just
thing.
sees one of my favorite scenes, though, and I'll talk about that in a sec, but Danny Glover sees the pile of bodies on the subway and he goes, they were all armed. And he's like, oh, in this universe that they've created, if just to go on the subway, it's safer to be armed. Because, this is very similar to another movie we've talked about on this podcast, The Future Year of 1997 in LA.
Yeah, I know. I actually was thinking about that.
It's all crime ridden and it is meant to, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah, I realize there is a connection between this and Escape from LA, which is that it is a much maligned sequel to a beloved action classic from the 80s that takes place in LA and whose basic supposition about the city is that it's an absolute shithole with no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
And both movies I'd be willing to defend to an extent.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way, where I probably prefer Escape from LA to this because that movie is just a little bit more audacious.
A little bit. It's a little sillier what it needs to be, but what it does for me is it does the lore stuff. And even when it comes to the lore of LA being a hellhole, I love the way it does it because it's very reminiscent of the way RoboCop handles the reporting on crime kind of thing. There's a lot of news coverage in this film, and the opening scene of this movie is a gang fight. And it's a gang fight that has to be interrupted by Danny Glover, and it's being reported on by the press at the same time. But you see there's the one reporter, and she's reporting on whatever's going on, and like there's just people getting shot behind her, and she's just like, fuck this, and runs off camera.
That's like one of the first things that happens.
It's one of the first things in the movie,
like, you immediately see it, and it's like,
immediately
this
setting
is
this as like, this is
a
somewhat
vulgar,
satirical, vulgar,
unpleasant. You're right. It does kind of have that. The subway scene, which I think we should talk about a little bit, kind of through the lens of, because we were originally going to talk about Bill Paxton here.
Yes.
And Bill Paxton is playing the kind of the brash, I know what I'm doing, man. I'm here to, be a hero type guy. And he is on the subway with his partner.
Mm-hmm.
When he sees what looks like, I think, like gangbangers or somebody who's about to rob somebody else, like a quiet looking businessman who, when they go to rob him, says, I'll give you my money, and then pulls a gun out of his briefcase. And then when he points it at them, they point a bigger gun at him. Yeah. At which point an entire subway car of people, including like an old person, like who looks like Estelle Getty.
It feels like a bit out of Airplane.
It is. It's like almost like a Friedberg and Seltzer sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where everybody just pulls out these huge guns, and the Predator then lands on the. It's also really funny, by the way. This is an LA movie with a subway set piece.
Yes.
Love that. The Predator comes in and just wastes everyone with a gun, which is basically everybody on the train. While his partner tries to get everybody off, Bill Paxton makes kind of a last stand here. It is funny that he does get kind of like the coolest death, like he's the one who
he's the one who gets
down.
The Billy death in the first film.
Yes.
Yeah. And like Billy, he does get his spine
and skull ripped out.
Yeah.
This is honestly a great set piece, and the kind of heightened, almost cartoony element of it, I think, kind of belies maybe like a version of this movie that they wanted to make and maybe were stopped from going all the way on.
Like a more
satirical, like sillier movie.
It feels like that, especially when you talk about the cast. In the cast, any of these actors could be comedic actors for sure. But it also, there's a lot of lore building in this film that is definitely a lot more present in this one, because this is a movie where, I know it's a lot of the same writers, but it's not all the same.
It is
staff.
No, it's the same two writers.
Oh, it is the same two
who
writers.
originated the character. Yeah.
You could tell, they were expanding on it. It's this is the very next scene after the subway scene is definitely one where it's you watch and it's oh, these are people who get it, who are making it. So the very next scene is the Bill Paxton's partner, Officer Leona. I don't know the actor's name, but she gets cornered. She gets cornered by the Predator, and the Predator, with the infrared vision, sees that Leona is pregnant.
Yes,
and whether or not Leona is armed, the Predator is seeing that as this is someone who is unarmed and leaves her alone.
It's one of two instances in the movie that there's a character from another movie this kind of reminds me of. the Predator is obviously like a monster who can't really meaningfully interact with other human characters. I mean, Alien versus Predator tries to, not great effect to make that happen, because that movie kind of needs that to happen for it to function at all. But there's that scene where he sees that the woman is pregnant and decides not to kill her. And there's another moment where he appears before a child, examines his toy gun, realizes it's not really a weapon, and then disappears without causing him any harm.
Yeah.
It really reminds me of, because this is a character who makes a great toy. This is a character who there's a lot of like theoretical appeal to children, but within the story world can't meaningfully interact with any of them. This really feels to me like what they do with Jaws and Moonraker, where they give him a humanizing moment where he can be kind of a hero, or he can have some redeeming factor, where kids can be like, oh, but I would be friends with the Predator because look, he let little Timmy run away.
Oh, that's funny.
It's just so funny that they literally have a save the cat moment for the Predator, where like, oh, he's good with kids.
Well, it's meant to expand on the fact that it's only looking for a combat. It's only looking for a challenge. Like, obviously, like the only reason it's not fighting that kid is because the kid wouldn't be able to fight back. I think
he's not just
It
mindless.
is still a monster.
The difference between that and, it has to come up a lot because they demand comparison, than a xenomorph, which is basically just a wild animal.
Yes.
Is that there is some, they are evolved enough that they have a preference in like what they're willing to do to get their next meal. This is a weird. It's a really, I'll say that this, for mood wise, this is a successfully very tense movie.
I think so.
For its whole runtime.
I think
I'm watching this and I'm like, this is like a really putrid, kind of stressful. It really recreates that feeling of being in the city on a hot summer day, where you are just, it doesn't matter if you're like sitting quietly in your bedroom, you're uncomfortable in every single situation.
Well, it also somehow captures the isolation aspect, and you're in the middle of LA, but you still get these characters that feel isolated, and you feel isolated with them because of, the way that they set up these scenes. But I do want to talk about and touch on briefly real quick is how good the VFX are in Predator 2, and they are better than the VFX in Predator 1.
The VFX in the original Predator are kind of like,
they're experimental. They're brand new.
They're experimental. They're brand new. They sound like they were a nightmare to implement.
Yeah.
I have just kind of a fondness for them. I'm not going to sit here and say they're amazing, but I think they do exactly what they need to within the movie.
Yes.
How did they evolve a little bit in Predator 2?
So, well, here's the thing. Predator, when I talk about like how that last hour of the movie, I'm completely glued to my seat. The only time it looks bad is when it kills Shane Black. And it's the very first time we even see the Predator. So I'm talking about like the camouflage Predator.
Yes.
It looks really bad in that one shot. And it's the very first time we see it, and then they just blow it right off the bat. But every other time we see it, it looks really good. And it was like innovative and brand new technology at the time. Predator 2, there's a shot in the cloaking device that I rewound it and I watched it a couple times as someone who knows about VFX and has done VFX. I still can't figure out how they would have done it in 1990. Was it?
Yeah.
1990. There's a shot where you see Predator is going after one of the gang members, and he's stepping through a puddle, and it's like when it's coming towards the camera, like that makes sense. It's far in the distance. What you would do is you would put like an air cannon underneath the puddle and just like make it shoot up. That seems like it makes sense. But then it shows it from behind close up, and you see the Predator's feet are going into these puddles and making splashes, and you see the outline of where the foot should be, but you see right through it because it's invisible. I don't know how you would have done that other than like, I don't know, maybe a RoboCam and a clean plate, but they prove that they're not doing that because they have a guy walking behind them in the background. So I don't know how they did this in 1990, but it's incredibly effective.
I'll say this is a huge effects flex of a movie. Like all throughout, like even just in terms of the number of VFX shots. Like it's not like there's like a dearth of like the cloaking shots in the original Predator. He's like cloaked the entire movie in this. It's kind of nuts. Like it's in a lot of the movie.
It's in a lot of the movie. The last thing that I really like is it adds the lore that the Predator and the Predator as like a civilization and as a culture has been coming to Earth for and all over the universe for generations and centuries. And that's something that's added into this movie where Danny Glover, after defeating the Predator in this movie in a muscle fight, which is, I still don't love that, but,
I think that's
in a muscle fight.
It's just the only time we've seen anybody have any degree of success in a one-on-one with a Predator is Arnold before this.
Yes.
Arnold Schwarzenegger does not look like a human being. And that's kind of what you need someone to look like they can do one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's like when we're watching Danny Glover, he's still got like a tie on. A thing that, by the way,
he's wearing a button-up shirt. Yeah.
A thing that somebody gets made fun of for in the first Predator movie.
Oh yeah, you pushing too many pencils. Yeah,
I do love in that scene where he's like, "You pushing too many pencils. What's the deal with this tie?" And Carl Weathers' response is, "Hey man, stop ragging on the tie." Yeah. Like he's got no response to it.
Oh, you know what? That's actually something that I think I brought up in one of my notes. Is there's a scene somewhere where Jesse the Body Ventura is he's Jesse the Mind Ventura now. Did you know that?
I didn't know this.
His body doesn't work that well anymore.
Oh. Okay.
Anyway,
does the mind work well now?
No.
Okay.
So Jesse the Body Ventura, he's talking to Richard Chavez. His character's name is Pancho, and Jesse Ventura's character's name is I don't remember. Anyway, Jesse, he goes after one of the fights. He goes, Pancho goes up to him. He goes, "You're bleeding, man." And Jesse Ventura's like, "I ain't got time to bleed." Richard Chavez is like, "All right." Yeah,
no, there are a lot of moments like that. And actually the "Hey, stop ragging on the tie" one is, I think, where I think this movie is like very, very aware of what it's doing satirically, which is that you'll hear someone say something like, "I ain't got time to bleed," which is something that like an action hero might say, and then how a real person might respond to hearing something that insane.
Yeah. And
you're just like, all right, man. I guess.
All the Arnold one-liners are in the beginning of the film, not really to the Predator. There's the famous, "You're one ugly motherfucker," which he says. Actually, that line is in both of these movies.
That line gets repeated here. I want to talk a little bit about. There's a unique choice here with the characterization of this specific Predator.
The fact that they make it talk.
It seems like it can imitate human speech if it hears it, because when the kid says, "Do you want a piece of candy?" and he like taunts a couple people with like, "Do you want a piece of candy later?" He repeats you ugly motherfucker at one point.
Yeah, I think it's also because it's a it seems like a good skill for a hunter to have. Think of a duck call. It's like I think of it that way. It's clearly not talking. It is really trying to mimic more than anything. But it feels like a hunter would a duck call. But also the hunter is not a good name for the movie. The Predator is a much better name for it.
Yes, it feels like it has a little bit of like it's taunting. A little bit.
Yeah.
It's what was the catchphrase that Danny Glover had? It's just like
"shit happens."
Oh yeah, "shit happens." He repeats that.
Shit happens,
the Predator repeats "shit happens" back to him, which I guess makes him kind of like a Mina bird.
Yeah,
where he just learns phrases.
Or a lyre bird, right? Is that the one?
Lyra. I thought Mina was. I thought Mina was the Lyra.
Is it Lyra? Lyrebird?
I think it's Mina, because I watched.
I don't know much.
I watched the first season of Twin Peaks again recently. And there's Wally the Mina bird in there.
Oh, yeah.
So I believe that's the case. I get all my fact checking from 90s TV shows.
Do you want to end on like a positive with Predator 2? Because I think the ending is a solid positive. So we talked about how Danny Glover, upon killing a Predator, earns respects from all the other Predators. That are
9 Predators.
There are like 9 Predators in that scene. And they're all played by
his name is Kevin Peter Hall.
Kevin Peter Hall. And my quick question is: you think they would have made a third one if he had not unfortunately died not too long after this film? I think they would have.
I think they probably would have, because this movie was received negatively, but did okay financially, right? I don't know. I actually don't. I didn't look up the box office.
So Kevin Peter Hall, another really great monster performance, and that's really what he did for the most part. He's most known for Predator and Harry.
7'2".
And Harry and the Hendersons. That's the other film he's known for.
Equally monstrous characters.
Anyway, so after that scene, Danny Glover is confronted by a whole bunch of Predators who are just showing respect for him. They give him a trophy, which is just this pistol from 1715, which is insane.
I saw that and I was watching.
It's like, show it, don't explain it.
Is this a reference to something at all?
Just show it, don't explain it. It's
the
great.
more I thought about it, I'm glad that it is not referencing anything specific, to be clear. Yeah, he ends with, and actually it's kind of the one awesome, like,
it's a really well done scene
he gets.
that is adding so much to the character, so much to the lore. And that's it.
Yeah.
Where you technically the end of the Predator saga, or the original Predator saga.
Yeah, because the others, I haven't seen the further sequels. What I'll say about the franchise as a whole is that it has, with each sequel, tried the naming convention that almost every other franchise only tries one of.
Yeah.
So we have Predator.
Yeah.
Great title for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Predator 2, understood why you went there. Predators, heightening, just like Aliens.
Yeah.
And then it does The Predator, and we're like, oh shit, okay. So we're just basically, it means that, like, for SEO reasons,
I would argue that both, well, actually, I barely remember The Predator, and that sucks because there are some things that are fine with it, if I remember right, but Predators is a reboot.
Yes, I guess.
And I think The Predator is too. I don't remember.
I think that they're just kind of floating continuity. Yeah. What I like about the way that this franchise is structured, each sequel title could be the title of the second film in the franchise. I guess is more what you know what I mean? Like
Aliens, yeah.
Every single one, like if it were like Predator and then The Predator, you'd be like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Like that's an alt for Predator 2.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, just as somebody who is really interested in the way that franchise construction works, honestly, Predator 2 is like significant. Like, it's tantalizing enough for me to dive into the rest of the series. Something I think I'll probably be doing very soon after.
I haven't seen Prey. I've seen all of them, but now I'm going to watch Prey. For sure.
Prey, and there's a new one coming out, I think, from the Prey guy next year.
I'll catch it for sure.
That is titled Badlands.
Oh,
so it kind of is breaking my theory.
Yeah.
But yeah. But that's the end of our discussion of Predator 2. We've previously ended this on talking about a movie that maybe you would want to catch if we saw it, you know, going into theater. I think in the spirit of what we're talking about a little bit, what is another movie that in theory you might want to come on to kind of state the case for because you think is unfairly maligned?
Oh, interesting. Well, I gave you a few examples, and there's one we talked about, like, doing real seriously, and we might actually end up getting to do. But let's add another one to that batch. I'm going to talk about one of my wildest takes out there.
Sure.
My favorite Rocky movie is Rocky 4.
I love Rocky 4, but like the idea of putting it on the same. I'll tell you what. Have you seen the recent alternate cut? Because I think it improves it.
Yeah,
I think that, like.
Oh, it improves my favorite one.
I honestly really think that, like,
I just love it because it's silly.
Rocky 4 is a classic, like one of these, you know. So that's a great answer. But one, do you have anything further to plug? We've had you on kind of recently. Has there been any further development with some of the short films you got out there right now?
Oh, my short film Pizza Dreams is doing very well on the festival circuit right now.
Yes.
But I don't know when this episode. I don't know when this episode is coming out.
This is coming out very soon. I think on the 24th.
I just finished editing and coloring a music video for the band Midnight Machines, which is kind of interesting and fun. We got some
cool
Olympic fencers involved.
Oh wow!
Yeah, okay. So it's a pretty fun experience there. So when that gets out, I'll make sure to send you a link.
Yeah, of course, and then we'll cross post it if it's available.
It'll be on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. With that being said, this has been Bad First Impression. Please like, comment, share. I forget the division of which of those activities goes on which platforms, but we're on YouTube and we are available as an audio only version anywhere you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate us 5 stars. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. It's the best way to grow the show is just by word of mouth. You can find us on all socials at BFI Pod. And you can find me, Devin Warner, your host, at What If Devin, also on all socials. We have some announcements coming up soon, some things that we're cooking up that we can't quite talk about just yet, but just look out for that. The show is going to have a little bit more of a kind of serial structure moving forward, so look out for that in the coming weeks. But until next time,
get to the choppers.
Get to the choppers, a quote that is not from the movie Predator 2. Bye, everyone.